Hi guys, it's Kian on option C. Today's video is a bit different from my usual videos. I want to share with you guys a mixtape that I made. So the mixtape is basically for, I'm looking at my notebook here so that I don't ramble too much. But yeah, so today's mixtape is actually for the people who, like me, are disillusioned by work, and more specifically, work in today's time, in modern times, which in itself entails like a capitalist setting. But also, all the other stuff like hustle culture, and then the reaction against hustle culture, which is kind of this whole lying flat thing, and then now we've kind of moved past that. Anyway, I'm not gonna talk specifically about the situation about like the work and the kind of culture we have around work. It's a bit more nuanced than that. Today, what I wanted to do is to share with you guys a mixtape, which is basically a list of 12 songs that, for me, I found personally very helpful in my own journey towards navigating my personal relationship towards work and what work means to me, or rather what work means in relation to me in this modern capitalistic world. And I just thought, like, rather than hear me express my own personal opinion or somebody else's personal opinion, or like hear about the state of the world, which there are videos doing that, maybe listening to the song, like your own personal experience of listening to the songs will help to guide you and maybe let you explore how you personally feel about your own relationship towards work and the state of the world, regarding work specifically. So I guess the first question, if you're new to this channel and you've never seen me before, you're probably like, who are you? What is this? Why does it matter? So the mixtape is both as much for anyone who, like me, is disillusioned with work, but also for me personally, as somebody who's gone through 3 different periods of being deliberately or chosen to gone through different periods of being like, I'm not gonna work in the productive sense of society. For like, the first time was a year, the second time was like about 5 months, half a year, and then now I'm currently in my 3rd period where I'm not working in a way that like people from the outside will look at it and deem that it's productive. So you know what, I'm just gonna leave this on the side. I don't know whether I'll look at it all the time. I'm just gonna talk about it. So I made a mixtape for a variety of reasons, one of which is, I think sometimes what you need isn't other people telling you like how they feel about work or how the world is right now about work. Sometimes what you need is to have somebody holding your hand so that you can sit in your own feeling of where you feel about work, and sometimes that's a very uncomfortable feeling, very complex, very complicated and tangled and nuanced, and it's a lot of the times it's just very uncomfortable to sit in it. And for me, the way that I've found useful, or like the way I found helpful, instead of like just, only looking to other people to kind of try to sit with me if I find it very uncomfortable to sit with myself, what I found is that like sometimes if I'm not in a state where I want to look to other people for help, but I'm also not in a position where I feel like the discomfort is so great in sitting with myself alone that if I resort to only that strictly, I cannot process my feelings. The way that I found personally helpful is to kind of just listen to music. It's kind of there, but not really, and like there's in a way somebody behind that music. There is somebody who made it, somebody who had intentions when they made it, but then it's also about me and how I interpret it, how I feel about it. So I realize I rambled on quite a bit without telling you, but like the mixtape is available. I don't know which side of it will appear on. I'll link it so that you can just listen to it if you don't want to listen to me ramble, and feel free to make your own personal associations with it. You don't have to like all the songs. It's my taste. So, I'm sure there are people who don't enjoy the kind of music I listen to. And that's fine. I think the reason why I made a mixtape is, I think, one, because the songs personally have helped me in my own personal journey of working. So for people who don't know my history, a brief recap is something like I worked in an office setting for about 4.5 years. Then I took a period of 1 year off of work, and then after that I went back to work at a different job. This is in an F&B setting. So I was basically making coffee, and then I did that job for 2 years, and then after that I took half a year off, and then I went back to making coffee again at a different place. I did that for 4 months, and then I left, and that's where I am now. So my third period of being off of work. So I think it's important here to kind of for today's video, I'm gonna make a distinction between work and creation, just so we have like terms that we can kind of refer to more easily. So work, sometimes when I use it, I don't mean it to have a capitalistic notion. If you see some of my older videos where I talk about work, I do make it a point to kind of talk about how it's important to divorce work from the capitalistic valuation of productivity from it. But for today's, so I don't personally think that like work necessarily has a capitalistic connotation, but I think the way we use it oftentimes carries it, because most people are not thinking like, when I talk about work, I am kind of assuming a norm, and that norm is that we are working in today's modern day context with a capitalistic undertone, where we value things like productivity, things that can be measured by monetary terms, and anything that cannot be valued by monetary terms is kind of just not seen as valuable work, or not even deemed as work at all oftentimes. So anyway, I hope the audio is doing fine. It's very windy here, which is great for me, but I don't know how it comes out in the audio. But for today's video's context, I'm just going to refer to work anytime I'm talking about doing things in a capitalistic way. So the work will carry a capitalistic connotation, and when I use the word creation, it will kind of be like the meaning of work without a necessarily capitalistic understanding of it. So hopefully that will make it a bit easier to talk about in today's context without having to keep saying the word capitalist all the time. So music's helped me on my own personal journey. Why a mixtape? So originally it was just gonna be a playlist, but I grew up in a time where I still bought CDs and where listening to music via albums or on the radio was the norm. We didn't have streaming apps when I was younger. So I had a habit of having the same CD, the same album, playing it from start to finish, looking at the lyrics book, and then trying to decipher the meaning of the song. And because, you don't have money to own so many CDs as a kid, you kind of just listen to the same album on repeat and you digest it a bit more every time. And I didn't know it at that time, but now that, it's much easier to get music everywhere on YouTube, on streaming platforms, I kind of miss the experience of, I guess, consuming music in the form of an album, in the form of a fixed number of songs in a particular set of order, in which the person who made that album has considered things like flow, like how this song flows into the next one, the overall theme of the whole album, the overall story. There is usually loosely a narrative going from the start to the end. It kind of carries you through a journey. Whether you like that journey or not is a separate thing, but there is some consideration. And so what started off as thinking, I'll make a mixtape, I'll make a playlist for songs that has personally helped me in my own journey of like figuring out why I'm so disillusioned with work in a capitalistic sense. Sort of became like, why not combine these two? Let's talk about it in a mixtape. So it's just called a mixtape because none of these are my songs. But like, I wanted to preserve the idea of an album where somebody has taken the time to curate the song, to figure out some sort of an emotional journey from the start to the end, and to kind of like there's a reason why it's like this, and there's a fixed start and there's a fixed end. You can repeat it if you want, but if not, it's just like a fixed listening time, right? So yeah, I think that's about it. So I think I'll just go into the songs and tell you why they are personally important to me. What I really do hope is actually that, you would listen to the mixtape. And I'm hoping that by putting it as on YouTube as a playlist, because that's the name of the feature, that maybe people will find it by itself rather than finding this video necessarily and then listening to the playlist. I don't know, we will see whether that happens. If not, I think doing this, like putting together this mixtape, actually also gave me some insights into myself, which I'll talk about at the end if I remember. I'm gonna go through the songs that I've put in track by track and why they were personally important to me, and then hopefully if I remember at the end, I'll talk about how compiling it has also been not intentionally but kind of accidentally, I guess, useful to me understanding a bit more about myself and my journey. So go forth and listen and make your own conclusions about it, or you want to listen to mine first? Go ahead. So the first song in this mixtape is Peppertones. Sometimes translated as runaway or fugitive. In Korean is 도망자, which is if you translate it to Chinese, is 逃亡者, I suppose, which is, the person who runs away. So I guess fugitive is fine. Interestingly enough, I didn't super plan it. It wasn't conscious when I did it, but I'm wearing a Peppertones concert t-shirt today. So, yeah. They're one of one of the bands that's very close to my heart. So, they make the list twice. Anyway, so, Runaway by Peppertones is the first track on the album. And the reason the first track on the mixtape. And the reason for that is because when I went to a Peppertones concert for the first time ever in, I believe, 2018? I think maybe 2019. It's not the concert that I got this shirt from, this is a different one. But like, the first time ever I went, I was still working in my first job, the office job, the one that I was in for 4 years. 2019 would mean that I was about 2 years into that job. So at that time I had not really thought of like, ever taking time off from work. I was at that time still very much bought into the whole Singapore dream of sorts, which is roughly summed up as like study hard, work hard, get a good job, earn money, and then like the rest of it that I don't really subscribe to even at that time was like, get married, have 2 kids, that kind of stuff. But like, I think at that point I hadn't really thought it was possible for myself, like me personally, to ever take like a gap year. So like in university I never took a gap year, and I thought it would be even more outrageous to imagine that as a working adult. Like you're going through school to go to work to make money. Like, why would you take time off of that now that you're actually working and making money? That was the kind of mindset I had. So yeah, the reason why this song is here is because it's really kind of like a precursor to what I would start feeling later, what will become more apparent, which is my disillusion with the meaning of work in a capitalistic way. While struggling with the fact that I enjoy creation a lot. And at that time I hadn't really figured out that there's a divorce between work and creation, and that divorce comes from not the act of making things or doing things, but that social conditioning that we have around how our society views work and all that. So I had not gotten to that point at this point. At this point, I was just at a concert, really happy. And then I think towards the end of the concert, they played this song. So they were like, we're gonna play Runaway, and they just said it in jazz. I think it was like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I don't know. It was one of the later days of the week. So, like soon after that, people are gonna go back to work. So what the singer Shin Ji-pyong said was, when introducing the song, was like, we're gonna play this song next. It's called Runaway. Of course, they said all of this in Korean, and like, I might not have understood them fully, but roughly the gist is, we're gonna play this song, and it's about running away, right? Like escaping, and I hope, like, just like, this is a song for all of you guys who are gonna go back to work on Monday, and yeah, and like, I can't really remember exactly what he said, but that was kind of the sentiment that I got from it. And I thought it was quite funny. And the song itself is very suitable for it because it starts off with like a siren sound and an urgency. And since that concert, when the way this song was introduced to me, I went back and listened to the song quite a few times, like looking at it in terms of just how it sounds, also the lyrics, how I felt about it. I think it's a very popular sentiment that on Mondays, which is which happens to be the day that I'm filming this right now. On Mondays, a lot of people going back to work dread going back to work. That urge to run away is really, really very strong. But I think a lot of people kind of just leave it at that, like yeah, I don't want to go to work. I kind of want to run away, but then like there's no further action or development from it. But then it doesn't mean that you don't feel that sense of discomfort. So I think that's what I really want here, like putting this song here. It's kind of an acknowledgement of the fact that like you don't get to a place where you are disillusioned with work and then you are like, miraculously enlightened or whatever you want to call it, where you are suddenly like actually work in a capitalistic society is awful and actually all of us should just take time off of work. Like that is actually quite a hard step. It took me a lot of time and a lot of like learning about myself, undoing a lot of like things that I've learned to even be comfortable with the idea that like I might want to consider taking a year off of work. Like at that time, to me that was an impossible thought. Like other people can do it, but I can't, That was what I thought of it. So I think I just want to acknowledge that very early on in that journey, sometimes all you feel is just that urge to run away. But maybe that's where you start. So yeah. So the second song in this mixtape is Love Card by CM Blue. This song is particularly significant because it was the song that this and the third track on the mixtape are songs that I listen to on repeat constantly when I was making my decision to quit my first job. When I wasn't sure that I was gonna do it. I was like 90% there, but that last bit of like I'm actually gonna submit my resignation letter and that I don't have a reason that other people would, understand. It's not like I'm quitting this job because I'm going to a different job, a better job, or like one with more money or whatever. It's not a reason that most people will really fully understand, or so I thought. And so it made it feel like it was very difficult to quit, felt very selfish to be like, I'm gonna take a year off of work because I just want to know what it's like to not have my value as a person be tied to the fact that I'm doing work that other people value. Like, what is my value to myself, like outside from whatever value I can provide to other people? And the only way I knew how to do that at that time was to just be like, you know what, I'm just gonna cut everything off. I'm just gonna like be in a space where I don't have to provide value to anyone else but myself, be selfish about it and do it. And like I knew aspirationally that was where I wanted to be, but realistically taking the step was really difficult. And I think that is something that's one of the reasons why I listen to Love Card so much. Love Card is a song that is about breaking up with a girlfriend in a toxic relationship. That's technically what the lyrics are about. And I think, like, of course, I've chosen to interpret it in the context of my relationship to work being a toxic one, which is the similarity there. And it was very satisfying to see how in the music video they have scissors and they like, you can see them cutting the strings of connection and just being very like forceful about it. Not forceful, but like determined about it. And I think that's what I needed at that point in time. And kind of to have the acknowledgement that my personal relationship to work was a toxic one, but it didn't mean that it was any less sticky or that it was any... Like, just because I knew it was toxic didn't mean that it was easy to remove myself from it, And I think that comes through very similarly in how the song deals with a toxic romantic relationship, but for me, I chose to interpret it as my relationship towards work. So I listened to it a lot, and then I flip-flopped a lot between thinking that I will quit and then that I won't do it. So moving on to the third track. The third track is The Road Ahead. It is a 2021 National Day Parade song. So every year in Singapore, when National Day Parade happens, which is when, we celebrate Singapore's Day of Independence, we will have a new National Day, we'll have a new NDP song, and this was the one in 2021, which is the year that I quit my job. I quit my job in like October, November of 2021, the first job, which is the office job. So this was the song that came out for NDP that year, and bear in mind that this was also the time where COVID just happened, the year before that, like 2020. And so this song and Love Card both made me cry a lot, but this song even more so than Love Card, because I think the fact that it's about Singapore, it's about how people in Singapore needed comfort during that time after COVID just happened. I don't know, this song brings a lot of personal relations, like my own personal relationship to Singapore up as well, and the kind of culture of Singapore, which I'm only like really just starting to realize is one that I am not very good at articulating, because I'm so deeply entrenched in it that it's like, if you're a fish that's lived in water its whole life, how do you see the water? Are you even aware that you are not the water? You are in the water, but you're not the water. I think that's kind of how I feel about Singapore at this point in time. But anyway, this song captures a lot of that. It makes me cry every time I listen to it. Even now, it tends to make me cry. The lyrics are super meaningful to me, but I think it's also a slightly hopeful song. And it's also a slightly comforting song, especially around the second verse, where it's like basically saying we've done this before and we'll do it again. It's kind of like there's a lot of uncertainty, but we can do it. And I know it's about Singapore, but I think I really felt those words personally. Yeah. I'm not gonna sing the song, but it's running in my head a bit right now, so. Oh yeah, one more thing that I did right that I forgot to say is, I think whenever I listen to the song, the imagery on the screen helps a bit as well. The reminder that like Singapore is very young. Singapore is like, we just turned 60 this year, and so it's not uncommon that a lot of the Singaporeans like me have their grandparents as basically the first generation in Singapore. So, like, thinking about how just 2 generations ago, my grandparents, both sets on my mum and dad's side, basically braved a lot of like unfortunate circumstances to come to Singapore from China, travel down in a boat, in very cramped conditions. Not knowing like what life would be like here on this island. Coming down here, I don't know whether it was before or after Singapore gained our independence, but just the idea that like 2 generations ago, my own grandparents could be so brave, and now I'm, living a relatively comfortable life where the kind of hardship that they will have to go through is not imaginable. The kind of like dire circumstances driving them out of China, which is that there's no opportunities for them there, right? Like, of course, some parts of their family continue to stay in China. We're not really in contact, so I don't know what's the circumstances there, but like, something pushed them out of China to go to a place with an uncertain future like Singapore at that time. And for them to have dared to take that risk, and both my grandparents came over having had kids back in China. Not all of their kids made it. I don't know the exact circumstances of it. And then, of course, they had kids afterwards when they were actually in Singapore, of which some of them are my parents, right? Like, it's very difficult for me to imagine what it must be like for them. And it's very easy to be like, recognize those as hardship and not think that the modern version of our discomfort with whatever it is also in a way a hardship. It's not a hardship in the same way that it was for people of their generation. But I don't think it's something that we need to compare. I think we've just reached a time where like most of us living in this modern world don't really need to worry about like physical survival. But then we are faced with like different faced with different like difficulties. So yeah. So I think what I wanted to say, talking about my grandparents and stuff like that, is just kind of like, I think the outside circumstances look different, but I think it gives me strength to think that like I've come from people who took risks and were brave. Okay, yeah. I'm gonna cry if I talk about it more, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. I don't wanna make so many videos where I keep crying. Okay, moving on to the next track. The next track is the 5th one, New Hippie Generation by Peppertones. And this one I find particularly funny. So one of the reasons why I put it behind the road ahead, even though I actually encountered this song earlier, is that I think New Hippie Generation has a flicker of hope in it, and there's a kind of like innocence to it. I put the video, the official music video in, even though it doesn't have any English translated lyrics on it. If you scroll down, actually, you can find where I, on my other account, have put translated lyrics in. Yeah, because I really enjoy their songs and I translated some of their stuff. But like, so if you want lyrics, that's what I'll suggest. Go down into the comments, look at it. But like, watch the video. I think the video itself tells a story. The lyrics, of course, also tells a story. I really enjoy the imagery of like two brightly dressed guys going about like a very grey and dreary South Korean like office landscape. Korea is interesting to me because I've spent a fair bit of time there, in a sense that like I don't travel super a lot, but of all the times I've traveled, I think Korea takes up quite a big portion of it. I also was there for 3 or 4 months for exchange at one point when I was studying in university, so it has a lot of my own personal memories as well. But like, I would say it's relatively true that Korea is quite grey in the sense of like how people dress. People tend to be in black and white a lot. So it was very funny to see like two very brightly dressed guys going around in the music video and then setting up like camping chairs on the floor in the middle of a busy street. I thought the imagery was very funny. And I like putting it after the road ahead because I think if you watch both videos, you can kind of see a very casual camera view, like a very casual depiction of like how Singapore's landscape is like in the road ahead, and then afterwards in New Hippie Generation, you can kind of see how South Korea's landscape is like. So yeah. But I think the thing about New Hippie Generation is also the lyrics. Talking about things like, isn't it great that there's no tax on sunlight? Isn't it amazing that the world is so big, so great, so vast? There's that childlike innocence about it, a childlike hope of a better future. And I say childlike because I don't think it's naive necessarily. And I don't think it's childish. I just think that there is that innocence that a child has about the possibilities of the world before like any conditioning gets piled onto the child. So I think for me the song is really sort of to remind myself that like, of course, one, I think that there is simple pleasures to be found in life. Even now, like, it's true that there's no tax on sunlight. And I think it's a bit hard for me to understand as somebody who grew up in a tropical place where sunlight is very plentiful. But when I was in Korea, I knew, when I was in Korea, one thing I realized about myself is in winter when so let me rewind a bit. So in tropical countries, I don't realize this, but if you look at people who grew up in tropical countries, there is a conditioned behavior in which we hide from the sun in general. Most people would. And it's not something that we think about. I didn't even realize this until I was in Korea on exchange during winter. So my tendency is that I would move to walk in the shadows and I would avoid direct sunlight. Just because in a tropical place it's so hot, you don't want to walk in direct sunlight, you want to be in the shade. But then when I was in Korea in winter, the only spot that was comfortable was under the direct sun, because otherwise it was just too cold. Every time I found myself in the shade, I would shiver and then I'll be like, oh, right, I've moved. And then I have to manually, like, you know, override it consciously and be like, now I step into the sun, and I'll be like, sunshine. And then like a few minutes later, I'm like, shit, I'm in the shade again. So it's very funny, to observe yourself doing this if you're also somebody who, from like me, grew up in a tropical area. Our relationship to the sun is very different from a lot of the people who experience the 4 seasons. And I never really understood that until I personally went through it. So after that, I've come to appreciate the sun a bit more. I don't like it when it's directly bearing down my face, especially in Singapore where it's very hot, but I can appreciate it a bit more than before. So yeah, lyrics like, isn't it great that there's no text on sunlight? I really, really feel that. I really, really felt that when it was winter and I just wanted warmth. Like, yes, it was very nice to have sun on my face and that we're not taxed for it, you know? You can just look up to the sky and enjoy it. And I think this is something that, like, a little bit of a sidetrack, but I think this is something that, like, I also realized when I was in the UK. I kind of understood why British people talk about the weather a lot, because it is really very grey. Like, the skies are very grey, and as a result, because it's always so dark and grey and gloomy all the time, I can really understand why it's a beautiful thing when the sun comes out. And, you know, why they make it to be such a great deal. And I get it. Once I was there, I got it. But like in Singapore, trying to understand that when the sun is, you know, around all the time. Like right now, it's relatively cloudy actually. I mean, there's the sun there, but like it's relatively cloudy. I won't be able to sit outside for so long if it's not, because it's almost noon or it's noon, and I'll be sweating buckets if it's not cloudy. But yeah. So another thing about this song, I mean, just briefly about peppertones, is also really like why I like them so much. As I've said in a different video, is that they are kind of like not typical musicians, in a sense that they never really set about their path that way. They started as really smart science students, and then they went on to, I think, computer science school or computer engineering, something like that. And then they were in a very prestigious university. So I think the expected path for them was that, you know, they're smart, they should go on to do like science or engineering or computer related jobs where they will earn a lot of money. But they didn't, and they decided instead to pursue the path of becoming musicians because that's what they really wanted to do. And I think the reason why I like them so much as a band, I mean, besides the fact that of course I enjoy their music, is that they really, I think they personally embody the kind of person that I would like to be. Somebody who isn't afraid to do what is best for them. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next song. So the New Hippie Generation was the 4th track. I think I said 5th. Okay, sorry. The 5th track is actually All Good Things Come to an End by Nelly, Furtado. So we're jumping timelines a little bit here. I listened to this song quite a bit when I left my second job, which is the barista job where I worked for 2 years. So this song is kind of slightly bittersweet, I guess, because I did enjoy my 2 years working as a barista in the first cafe that I was at, but I also knew that it was not right for me in the sense of, like, it was too small of a container for what I want my life to be. So it's a bit of that bittersweetness of like, it was good for the period that I was there, but I cannot stay there if I want to really have the kind of life that I want. Anyway, sorry about my nose. Yeah. I'm not gonna spoil the lyrics. I don't know whether you can spoil the lyrics to a song, but like, and also it's quite an old song, but like, I'm not gonna spoil the lyrics, but when you listen to it, just know that I laugh a lot at the part when the dogs were mentioned. Especially because I watched a lyrics video for this song, and the word die, I guess I spoiled it a bit, but the word die appears with exclamation marks, and like it's kind of like flashing on the screen every time it's mentioned, so it was very, very, very fun. But I would say this song is really, I played it a lot when I was leaving the second job to kind of remind myself that like as good as it was not where I would be in the long run. Like it's kind of just a step, and that I will have to move on from it. And also kind of like rushing through things, you just get closer to death, you know. So enjoy things while they last. Enjoy things while they are in the moment. Don't be too fixated on trying to get to the end. Because the faster you try to get to the end, the faster you are going towards your death anyway. There's a movie that's related, which I think is called Click or something. I have not watched it since it aired on TV. But yeah, it's a similar idea. You know, if you just fast forward through all the boring bits of your life, one day you're gonna find out that you're old and you don't remember how you've lived for the last, I don't know how many years of your life. And that's kind of sad. So while you can in the moment, just enjoy the moment, even if it's good, even if it's bad, even if it's good right now and you know you'll hurt later. So the sixth track is What Should I Do by Baby Vox. This is the 2025 version, a slightly slower one from the more like dance version that it originally was. The lyrics, there are English translated lyrics out there. It's a bit annoying to find. I couldn't find a version where it was conveniently on screen. The lyrics are somewhat relevant to how I feel. But again, it's a love song that I've kind of taken to explore my personal relationship with work. But I think the part that is most relevant is really the repetition of the title of the song, which is Na Otoke, and that is like, what should I do, you know? And even now, it's something that I ask myself a lot. Like yeah, sure, I've learned all these things about myself. I've undone some of my conditioning. I've kind of put it out, looked at it, you know, became the fish that went off its tank for a bit to be like, yes, I see that this is water and it was the medium that I was living in for a while. And then, oh, bloop, bloop, sorry, I'm drowning in air right now, so I should go back into the water. But it's kind of like yeah, I see that water is not me, but like I'm still a fish that needs water to live. Because, you know, this is the world that I live in. I can't remove myself from it. So then what do I do now? And I think this song is my go-to for sitting with that feeling. I go through the different tracks. I mean, the different versions of this. Sometimes I go for the dance one. Sometimes I listen to this more slower tempo one. But I chose this one to put as track 6 because it's kind of the right mood for where we have arrived in this mixtape. So I would say though, but I mean, somewhat similar with Love Card, there is a bit of that, like, because it's about a relationship that has broken up, right? There is always that lingering sadness. And then, but also that feeling of like, I know things are not working out the way they currently are, and if I don't move on, nothing will change. But I don't know what to do at the moment. I think it really encapsulates that very well. So track 7 is Colin's Zeal by Blur, and I would pair it together with track 8, Tracy Jacks, also by Blur. In my head, they are companion songs. And with these two songs, we kind of move on to another, a bit further ahead in my own timeline of where I am to work. These are the two songs that I've been listening to as I'm in my current third period where I'm not working. But where I am actually creating quite a bit, but I'm not working in the productive to a capitalistic world sense. I'm creating a lot of stuff for myself and to understand myself. This mixtape being one of my creations as well. And you don't have to think about creation like it's a big important thing necessarily. You just make because you have to. Because it's something that is coming from you that wants to be expressed into the world. It's not really a big thing, I think. So Colin, Zeal and Tracy Jacks I see together as kind of companion songs because if you look at the lyrics, Colin Zeal is a younger person, a bit self-important, a bit pompous, and it's kind of like the guy that is a more exaggerated version of what we think a successful person should be like. A person that I've also tried to be like, but never really got to that point. And Tracy Jacks is an older character, like a 40-something-year-old guy who is basically facing a midlife crisis. And the reason why I see them together is because I basically went through a quarter-life crisis when I decided to take a year off of work. And during that year off of work, the first time I was off work, I had to contend with that quarter-life crisis of who am I without work? What is my value as a person? Now that I'm not working. And those are very, very difficult questions to answer. And I think the somewhat annoying thing is that it doesn't really go away, even as I'm in my third unemployment period. It's still questions that I ask myself. Of course, I've gotten a bit further along with the kind of answers I have. But it doesn't fully go away. There are still times where I look back at the caricature that is drawn by the character Colin Zeal, which is maybe a more British interpretation. There is probably a more Singaporean interpretation of it, but in their essence, they are somewhat the same thing, which is an image of a successful person in today's society. And that person is kind of insufferable. And knowing all of that, there are still times where I think, should I just go back to trying to be that person? Even though I know it's not me, and even though I kind of don't want to be that person, I'm not sure I like that person. So I'm not sure that I'll like myself much if I become that person. But it's tempting, isn't it? It's so tempting to be somebody who is seen as successful to the external world. And the reason why I always like to listen to Tracy Jacks after Colin's Zeal is because kind of puts it into perspective. It's like, okay, so you did all those stuff. You've become successful in the eyes of people from the outside. But then now you're 40, and in the song he's hit with some health condition. It's not really explicit, but it's just kind of like he has some health issues. And then now you're wondering what you're gonna do with your life. Anyway, again, spoilers, but at the end of the song he kind of bulldozes over his old life. And I think that's a reminder that I need. Not that I should be bulldozing over my old life necessarily. Like, I don't really need to enact violence on myself. I can treat my past self with grace, because that's, like, whatever I did at that point in time, that was the best that I can do. So, like, there's no need to be, like, horrible to myself about it. I wasn't trying to be malicious to myself at that point in time. I was just doing the best that I could do with whatever I knew at that time. And, like, me now having more insight, having had more experience, may look upon that and be like, yeah, that wasn't the best move to have made. But then, like, I didn't know better at that time. So, but I think the reason why Tracy Jacks it's kind of funny. So, like, both Blur songs to me, I think, are quite hilarious. So there is a bit of that lightheartedness that I need sometimes. But it's also just a reminder to, like, me, like, I've come so far in my own personal journey of, like, where I stand against work and towards creation. And I haven't really arrived at any destination about this. Maybe I will never arrive at it. Maybe I'll never arrive at a conclusion about how I really feel about work or creation. I don't think that's the case, but, like, I'm definitely not at any sort of, like, proper final conclusion yet. But I don't want to go back. I think it's what I'm trying to remind myself. And so we move on to track 9, which is another What Should I Do? So it's the same song as track 6, but this time covered by a different band. This is covered by 6 Band. And let's just say I cried to this version a lot more because he screams in it. And I don't know what about it, but when he screams, I think it triggers something in me that also wants to scream. And then I just end up crying instead. So, yeah, hang on. I really wanted to avoid blowing my nose on camera, but, like, I think you can tell that I'm getting a bit sniffly. Okay. Anyway, we'll move on to track 10, because I think track 9 is similar to track 6 in terms of the lyrics. It's just a lot more emotional for me, and that's why I've put it in again as another track. I think repetition say something, and it's kind of saying the same thing but in a different font, and I think that's important as well. So track 10 is Everybody Scream by Florence and the Machine, and it's here after the screaming bridge of What Should I Do cover, because I think this is the point where I realized, yeah, I really need to scream sometimes. So this is a song that I'll recommend watching the MV and just like soaking it in. It's so good. The MV is so good. It brings up so much emotions just looking at it. Like, I don't know what about it really, but like watching the MV really just pulls me out of my head into my body. And it's so visceral, the emotions in it. And it's so visceral and so raw and so real that it kind of makes me feel like it's okay to feel whatever ugly, horrible emotions that I'm feeling in that moment. It's okay to scream. It's okay to be whatever you are, no matter what it looks like in that moment. Nice, ugly, bad, good. Everything, the whole spectrum of it. And I was listening to this song on the way here to film today, and I really like the chorus where it says, like, I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember exactly what what the lyrics are, but it's like, here is a place where I don't have to be extraordinary and normal all at the same time. And I think that's something that a lot of us in today's modern world feel like about work, yes, sure, but also about our personal identity. Like, we feel like we have to fit in and be normal, but at the same time we have to stand out and be great. We have to like be there to catch all the attention that comes onto us. We're supposed to want it, to like it, but at the same time we're supposed to like not stand out and not be too strange, be safe. Being safe is also another one of those things that like I think it's also not just something that I think it's very common in today's context where people are choosing safety. Well, a group of people are choosing safety over being authentic. I think being safe is also a very Singaporean mentality. People want to choose the safe path, the safe thing to do. It's what our government is very good at. We're very, very good at picking the safest choice that will ensure that the default choice is safe for everybody and you'll never have to face danger. And then when something happened because somebody kind of flaunted the safetyness of whatever regulations were set in place, people will start blaming the government, being like, you know, why didn't you take precautions against this? And it's kind of like, the more railings you build up, the less people are aware of the fact that like you gotta be careful when you're at height, you know? I don't know, sometimes I just feel like being too safe is just, you get used to it and you turn off the instinct that you naturally have to protect yourself. And instead you rely on all these external things and kind of shut off your internal sense of guidance, of safety. I am going to move on because those rambles are kind of like the start of incomplete thoughts forming in my head, and I don't want to delve too deeply into them at the moment, so we will move on. So I would say Everybody Scream, really very deeply, viscerally emotional and impactful. And then the next song, the next one on the track 11, Glory Glory, I Am Free by Dear Matrona. Again, a song that isn't really about work. But I think I don't know, I don't even think the lyrics are necessarily like specific in this one to anything in particular, but the feeling I get listening to this song is very much, yeah, I don't know, I can't quite describe it. So like with some of these tracks in the later part of the mixtape, I'm still experiencing them now. Unlike some of the earlier songs where those are things that I have experienced and made sense of after reflection. So those are a bit more like cleaned up thoughts, and these are a bit more of my unpolished first thoughts, I guess. I don't really know exactly what I think about the song yet, but it makes me feel somewhat hopeful, but in a different way from some of the other earlier songs, the kind of hope that there is there. This hope right now feels more hopeful, like more realistically hopeful than the way some of the hope in the earlier songs do, like in The Road Ahead or New Hippie Generation. Like the hope in those, there is hope, yes, sure, but they don't feel very realistic for me right now, and it's a bit of an oxymoron, right? Like, how does something feel realistic? But I'm not gonna question it. Yeah, I just feel like the sentiments in Glory Glory I'm Free feels like a more grounded hopefulness that I can stand on right now in this moment, compared to the hopefulness of earlier songs where I think I've kind of not necessarily seen through the illusion of them, because I don't think they are false. I don't think they are illusions necessarily. I think they're just maybe not for me or not for where I am right now. So the last song is Starshaped by Blur. So this is track 12. And I've kind of placed it last because it's quite funny. I mean, it's a song talking about, like, I guess fitting in, working and stuff like that again. Kind of like you're slightly gaslighting your own self to be like, yes, I enjoy doing all of these things. I enjoy going into the office on Mondays and, like, you know, doing a work that I don't really care about. And, like, I put it at the end because I think if I had encountered this song earlier, I may not feel the same way about it as I do now. I think now, having gone through the journey of, like, contending with my discomfort about work, my very stubborn relationship in how I view myself as a person, and how a lot of that value I've placed upon work and the kind of value I give to other people in a capitalistic society, when in fact I am mostly just a creator. Like, I can't help but create, I can't help but make art, I can't help but make videos, I can't help but write stories, I can't help but need to draw, to paint. Like, I can't help but create, but are those valuable to other people, or does it just matter that it's valuable to myself? So I'm still in the midst of, like, figuring out all that. And I think Starship is funny for me at this point in my journey, because I guess especially also after listening through the whole list of songs before that, it's just kind of like, do I really want to go back to that? It's just a bit sarcastic and ironic when I listen to the lyrics, having gone through all of that. But maybe you don't feel that way when you listen to those songs, and that's fine. Like, whatever. I think the thing with any art or any sort of creation, music and things like that, is that there is value that the person who made it took away from it, and there is value that whoever views it, looks at it, interacts with it, contends with it, take away from it. And those two values don't have to be the same. There's usually some overlap, but it doesn't have to be the same. And the value that you as a person taking in the art has taken away from it is partly because of the art, sure, but it's also very much because of who you are as a person. And I think that says a lot more. Yeah. So I have no idea how long this video is. I'm actually quite tired. But I'm gonna do a brief summary about how I think doing this mixtape helped me learn a bit more about myself. So it's not conclusive, but it's just like observations that I've made that I'm gonna include here instead of like putting it in the description of my video, which is something that I do sometimes. I put my observation in the description because I don't catch it in time to say it in the video. I only recognize it when I'm editing. So now I'm gonna put some of the ones that I do recognize into this video. So I would say one is, I think it's interesting to me how there's repeats in this mixtape that I made. So there's repeats in terms of the bands that I listen to, and there's repeats in terms of song, right? And I think it tells me something about myself that there are certain things that repeat. There is some significance in why some things repeat and why some things do not. As to what those significances are, it's for me to dig in and find out. I'm not sure on all of them yet. But like I said, I mean, like the what should I do one, I think it's just a repeating theme of like trying to figure out, trying to negotiate that feeling inside you where you actually know what you want to do, but also all the fears and conditioning that you have that makes it difficult for you to actually make that step. And also sometimes you just need time to sit with your emotions to then be able to do that thing. But you know, it tells me that, like, for example, I love peppertones and right now I'm very much into Blur. Also interesting to me was that like there are a lot of like band music, so music made by a band that has vocals, guitars, bass, drums, sometimes keyboards. I guess that's a music genre I just enjoy a lot. That live sound of real instruments, and which is not to say I don't like other kinds of music, but I think something about a band makes sense for me in this context. I don't know, if I make other mixtapes, I guess we get to compare. And I think the last one I want to talk about is, I think the division between male voices and female voices in the tracks as I've kind of compiled them sort of leads me to believe there's two there's an easy way to look at it, and there's probably a more nuanced way to look at it. I think the easy way to look at it is kind of like a lot of the songs that are sung by a male voice tends to correlate with a very masculine energy of doing, like, and also of like thought in the mind. Very much like in the head kind of thing. And then the songs sung by women in the track that I've chosen tend to be, for me, very much more about a more masculine energy of like being in the body, being in that moment of like feeling or like sitting in it, not necessarily doing anything about it necessarily, but being in that now moment, in that embodied moment. So I would say there's an interesting like kind of like male voice versus female voice divide in how I've kind of placed the tracks, and a bit of a divide between like where a lot of thoughts are in the head versus where there's a lot of like emotions in the body. and that tends to sort of follow that male-female divide in terms of the voices that sing the song. There are some crossovers and exceptions, but that was just kind of like a surfacey interpretation, observation of the mixtape that I've compiled up. So this has gone on for long enough. I am just gonna end this without saying too much. Really what I hope is that if, you know, any of the songs could have helped you sit with any of your own difficult emotions, then I think that's really like all that I can hope for anybody to take away from this whole thing. So yeah, thank you for listening to my personal story about my own discovery and journey of my relationship to work, my disillusion with work, and my learning curve towards how I feel myself relating to creation through 12 songs that have accompanied me along the way. Yeah, feel free to share with me any songs that you find whether personally relevant to you or you think I might enjoy in the same context or different context. I don't know. If you have recommendations, leave them below. It's always fun to check out what other people think it's always fun to check out things that people think are interesting connections, you know. It's like, if you like this, I think you'll like that. But how somebody chooses to interpret it is always different and tells me about the person as well. So anyway, I'm just gonna end it. Okay. I'm not good at stopping talking. Alright, bye.